going to start with a roll call for attendance. We open the meeting.
Councilor Bergman? Councilor Bergman? Here. Councilor Colorio?
Here. Here.
Councilor King?
Here.
Councilor Merle Carlson?
Here.
Councilor Rivera?
Here.
Councilor Rose?
Here.
Councilor Rosen?
Here.
Councilor Russell?
Here.
Councilor Toomey?
Here.
Councilor Wally?
Here.
And Mayor Petty.
Are here. Okay, well, you'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll get going real quick. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
The Republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, first item up is this sort of announcement today. I know that Council Byrne is going to hold 15A, that ballpark authority, and Council Carlson is going to hold 18A on Orient Street condo location for National Grid. Then our first item up is approval of the minutes. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merle Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. Public participation, a person may speak for no more than 2 minutes on any items appearing on the agenda. Adrian, you know how many people are on right now? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like we have 19 people on the line right now.
Okay, so we can start that process. And I think some of those are the manager's people and some are just listening.
Yes, it looks like that's the case, and a couple have indicated as such. So let's see here. The first person I'm able to identify is Alex Guardiola. I'll unmute Alex now, and this is a reminder to everybody. Just please state your name, your city or town of residence, and the item of which you're speaking on.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alex Guardiola. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank you for your time this evening. I'm here to speak on item 11B regarding the redevelopment of the Greendale Mall to use it as a last mile distribution center for Amazon. Amazon is looking to make a significant investment in the city. The 121,000 square foot facility will add new vitality to a decaying building. Over the past 15 years, the property has steadily lost tenants, with only 2 anchor tenants remaining at the last aspect of it. In 2019, one of those anchor tenants left not only the mall, but the city altogether. The current last anchor tenant will be luckily staying in the city limits, but it has steadily declined and ended up in a foreclosure because of it. The new project will add approximately 500 new jobs, which includes 150 full-time employees, of which 30 to 50 of those jobs will be in the managerial capacity. Further, we talk about workforce development in the city, and these jobs will be at least making $15 per hour, and those in the managerial salaries will be about $60,000 and above. Moreover, we don't often see developers come into this with private money and not asking for any tax incentive package. Updating the site with a new building will add more value to the area and will in turn put this value back into our city tax rolls. Further, registering vehicles will give the city's excise tax in the amount of approximately $500,000 per year just to house the vehicles here in the city. And by the way, these vehicles will be in the way of electric vans, which continue the company's goals of reducing their carbon footprint and reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. The location of this type of the facility, because of its access to major roads and highways and the adjacent rail spur, will be perfect for it. It is zoned, as of right, in the BG3 zoning district, meaning they will not have to ask for a rezone in the area. It complies with all the dimensional requirements of the BG3 zoning district. It does not require a special permit, nor does it require a variance. It just requires a site plan review. Lastly, there's been a lot of conversations regarding the traffic patterns with this project. It is important to note that any other plan that was put together, whether it was full retail or mixed use, would have cost thousands of more trips to the location. For those of us who grew up in the area, know when the Greendale Mall at Heights, vehicles were lined up on 190 trying to exit onto the mall's exit itself. The traffic plan for this current plan would significantly reduce those traffic issues. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ, our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like the next person I'm able to identify is an Alex Mason. I'll unmute Alex now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Mason. I'm the CEO and president of Bud's Goods and Provisions, a retail dispensary located at 64 West Boylston Street. This evening, I'm here to support the resolution that was put forth with Councilor Rose and Councilor Wally. I support this resolution. I am concerned significantly about the new regulations that the CCC has put forth with regards to the wholesale delivery license. I think it puts a major reduction on tax revenues that the city would be expecting from retailers. I think it would directly compete with all retail locations. Second, I think it increases any security concerns that the city may have, as they will not be able to control who comes in and out of the city and how many vehicles are on the road at any given time. It will be much more difficult for the city to track. Third, I think it allows, it would create the city to lose entire control over the marijuana industry, the legal marijuana industry in the city. This is a direct attack on retailers. We have now seen over the last 10 years what online deliveries can do to retailers. And what's even further with this issue and more unfortunate is that 12 of the 15 retailers that the city took months and months to determine will not be allowed to participate in the delivery program. This is a major concern to at least 12 of the 15 retailers in the city, for they will not be able to participate for at least 3 years because they do not qualify to meet the economic empowerment status that the state requires. My other concern is I don't believe this license addresses the actual desire of what the CCC tried to do to create more opportunity. This is a business model that is for large investors with deep pockets to come in and set up Amazon-like models where it's Drizzlies, and they will take over the entire market with a few operators very quickly over the next few years, while retailers such as myself are not even allowed to compete or are not even allowed to try to compete to protect our businesses.
Okay. Can you wrap up your comments?
So I just wanted to express that, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next person I'm able to identify is a Benjamin Desjardins. I'll unmute Benjamin now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, as a lot in this agenda, I'd like to encourage, so I'll try to make it quick. First of all, I'm calling to support Mr. Coleman's petition, petition 9G, to reduce the number of signatures required for candidates for the 2021 municipal election. In the interest of safety and greater citizen choice for their representatives, I wholeheartedly support this measure. I'm also calling to support Order 10B regarding the post-pandemic restoration of MBTA commuter rail service on evenings and weekends. As a clinical scientist who commutes to Boston by the MBTA on evening and weekend trains, I know there are jobs of all kinds with evening and weekend hours that are harmed by these service reductions, and the reductions should be lifted as soon as possible to allow our citizens to continue to safely commute to the Boston area by rail. I look forward to the hearing addressed in item 16A regarding these service cuts. In an adjacent concern, I'd like to support Order 11J regarding equity and accessibility in transit services by the WRTA, city taxes, and TNCs. I'd like to support as well Resolution 12B regarding HR 8113, the Puerto Rico Self-Determination Act of 2020, and I thank Councilor Rivera and all councilors for their support of this this measure. Including item 7A. I will not mince words. Every member of this council has seen the violence carried out at the hands of our police officers this year. With rubber bullets, tear gas, and fists and nightsticks, our neighbors were attacked in their homes and beaten on their front steps in June, and the police union serves to protect these officers from any consequences of their crimes against the community. As the City Council enters executive session to strategize ahead of their negotiations with the police union, I would implore them to act in ways that serve the whole community. In June, I brought up an option in this meeting regarding municipally and privately funded police detail, and the police union's own published figures show that Worcester net spends over $3 million a year on municipal police detail at nearly $50 an hour. For this payroll outlay, the city could create over 50 new full-time jobs at a living wage and still save over $1.4 million over current expenditures without even touching police detail work with private contractors. In these times of mass unemployment and economic uncertainty, Worcester has the rare opportunity to both provide good-paying work for our jobless neighbors and to save millions of dollars doing it. We simply have to be willing to create these opportunities for those most able to benefit, rather than continuing to enrich the six-figure salaries of 90% of the city's top-paid employees. I've emailed each of you a copy of this statement with the figures I cited, and I ask you to act on behalf of the citizens you're elected to represent as you prepare for this meeting. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Okay, next speaker, AJ.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like the next speaker I'm able to identify is a Carrie Saldo. I'll unmute Carrie now.
Carrie's name and city of residence.
See here, Mr. Mayor. Not hearing Carrie, I'll unmute Chris Mitchum. Chris,
your name and city of residence, Chris?
Yeah, my name is Chris Mitchum, and I live in Portland, Oregon, and split time in Worcester. I'm the CEO of DM Cannabis here in Worcester, and we're proud to call Worcester our home for our first dispensary in the state. Along with Alex Mason, I'm deeply concerned about the latest round of regulations recently enacted by the CCC. I'm concerned for my business and the 30 people that we employ there. I'm also concerned for the city of Worcester, which I've grown to care about. You guys are going to lose a lot of money if this thing goes through. Basically, with this wholesale delivery license that the CCC just rolled out, folks can get licenses, in the middle of nowhere in the Commonwealth and deliver to Worcester residents, basically undercutting all of us that went through the process to get licensed and open up our shops in the city, and also undercutting you because you won't be getting the tax revenue for those sales. So it's deeply concerning, and anything that you can do to help would be amazing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like the next speaker I'm able to identify is a Joe Galil. I'll unmute Joe now.
Joe, is your name and city of residence?
Oh.
Okay, AJ.
Have some trouble with Joe. So here we'll move on to the next speaker is Juan Gomez. I'll unmute Juan now.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Clerk. My name is Juan Gomez, and I live at 144 Bishop Road in Fitchburg, but I, as you know, run Centro at 11 Sycamore Street in Worcester. And I'm calling on behalf of Councilor Saray Rivera's petition regarding the self-determination of residents of Puerto Rico, which is, as you know, they are citizens of the United States, but they do not have the right to self-determination. So we're asking the Congress of the United States to make sure that that is voted in this year's session, and we're asking the council to please support this, given the fact that a significant number of folks who live in the city of Worcester are of Puerto Rican descent. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Juan. AJ, our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next speaker I'm able to identify is Ben White. I'll unmute Ben now.
I'm just watching. I'm sorry.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So with that being the case, looks like the next speaker I'm able to identify is Laura Clancy. I'll unmute Laura now.
I think she's watching.
Oh, okay. With that being the case, it looks like we have a Mike Kennedy. I'll unmute Mr. Kennedy now.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, can you folks hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, I'm here to support Order 11J submitted by Councilor Rosen, and the reasons I support it is that out of the 110 licensed taxis in the city of Worcester, there's only one that's wheelchair accessible by Red Cab, and we just learned today that it is off the road once again. And even when they are on the road, they're not available 24/7 like a cab should be. Second is there were 1 million transportation network company rides in the Worcester area last year, but 0 wheelchair accessible rides. That has to change. We're the second largest city in New England. We want to, we'd like to try to put something together like they have in the city of Boston, and would be more than willing to, talk about that more. When we get the opportunity. And 3, I just support the disability community being at the table when it comes to affordable, accessible, on-demand transportation, or just on-demand transportation in Worcester, period. And that's pretty much what I have to say. And hopefully you'll be able to hear from some of my colleagues. I know you're trying to get a hold of Joe Belil, but I believe he'll be on the call. But that's it. Thank you, Mr. Rosen, for keeping us in the loop and getting us to the table.
Okay, thank you. And we'll try to go back to Joe in a few minutes before we move on. So, AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like the next person I'm able to identify is Robert Bilotta. I'll unmute Robert now.
Robert, just your name and city of residence.
Yes, hi, my name is Robert Bilotta. I live in Worcester. I'm just joining to also support the order put forward by Councilor Rosen, 11J, to talk about more equitable, accessible, on-demand public transportation for the city of Worcester. I'm a disability advocate, former Disability Commission member. We're really thankful to Councilor Rosen for putting this forward, and we're looking forward to discussing how we can improve the number of on-demand accessible transportation vehicles in the city. Like Mike said, Worcester put in 2019 over 1 million trips through transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft originated in Worcester. 0 of them were wheelchair accessible. Worcester had 1 wheelchair accessible cab that was being operated by Red Cab, and now that's currently off the road. So right now, individuals with physical disabilities can only use the WRTA paratransit program to travel within the city, and that is not on demand. So we really are looking to work with the WRTA, and hopefully the City Council will help us with that, to encourage the WRTA to explore more on-demand accessible options like the MBTA is doing. But there are lots of on-demand programs that are coming across the country with different setups. So the WRTA, we're hoping, can look forward in this direction and keep us involved in the process. Worcester has a real lack of accessible transportation right now, and we're hoping that we can work to improve that. So thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you. AJ, next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like Mr. Belil has rejoined, so let me try him again.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can, Joe.
Hi, Joe Belil. I'm from Holden. I'm representing East Seals today, and I'm here because of Order 11J. And I want to thank City Councilor Rosen for putting the order out. We feel that on-demand transportations are really important, especially for Worcester being the second largest city in New England. On-demand transportation, especially accessible, affordable, and available transportation is really important for a big city. It's important for people with disabilities, for older adults, and people who want to be able to do things outside the hours of the WRTA paratransit service. We just feel it's really important. We're really looking at what's happening in Westboro with the shuttle service and VIA. They're doing an on-demand shuttle service out there, and we feel that something like that in the future might be important for the city of Worcester and could be a great complementary service to have on top of that. But again, I'm here to support the Order 11J. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. And AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like Scott O'Connell would be the next speaker. I'll unmute Scott now.
I think Scott's just listening, Phil.
Very good, thank you. All right, with that being the case,
Scott's a reporter for Telegram.
Oh, great. All right, if that's the case, it looks like Thomas Gonzalez would be the next speaker.
Hello, this is Tomas Gonzalez. I'm one of the owners and operators of Core Technologies. We are just actually listening. We are going to be having a city meeting tomorrow regarding a delivery company in the city of Worcester, and have our community meeting. So really, we're interested in hearing people's thoughts and comments. We are also one of the first 5 groups to host a dispensary in the city of Boston, and can understand the other speakers' comments and concerns. But for the most part, as a woman in diverse-owned company, we're interested in hearing all people's thoughts on the subject, and really welcome the opportunity at a later date to have this conversation, obviously much further and deeper. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like Vicky G is the next speaker.
Vicky, your name and city of residence, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Vicky. Yep.
Great. My name is Vicki Grzinski. I live in Worcester, Massachusetts, District 5, and I am calling to speak on item 11B. I think it's really important that the City Council get a full analysis of the impacts that a potential Amazon warehouse would cause in the in the current Greendale Mall site. I was at the planning board meeting, and I noticed that there was no environmental impact study done, and also the traffic study. I flipped through the 363 pages. I will admit I didn't read the whole thing, but it was very, very limited. It only focused on the immediate area around the warehouse. I think that traffic study needs to be more robust. And so that's kind of specifically what I had heard in the planning meeting, and wanted to focus on that. But also just kind of generally, this seems like a really big and potential environmental impact for allegedly 150 full-time jobs, up to 500 total jobs. They talked at the meeting about using a lot of non-salaried labor, which can be really problematic. This is a company that is known for being a union busting company, so that concerns me. I don't think the jobs that we will be bringing into the city, if this does go through, will be a positive net gain for the city. I also am concerned after hearing about some of the problems that happened in Milford when they opened an Amazon warehouse in their cities. So I definitely encourage a much more thorough investigation and a much more thorough report on the impacts that a potential Amazon warehouse would have on the city. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ, our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looks like the next speaker I can identify is Yenny DeRoche.
Just listening in.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. AJ?
All right, with that being the case, it looks like we have 2 or 3 call-in users. So I'll unmute the first call-in user. So everyone on a phone, if you could just state your name, city, or residence, and we'll let you know if you're the person that we can hear. Not hearing a call-in user, I'll unmute another. If all the call-in users could please state their names.
Bill Coleman.
Mr. Coleman.
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, hi. I'm here to speak on item 9G. What I did is I filed a petition. Let me just give you a little history. Before 1983, all candidates for city council and school committee only needed 50 signatures to get their name on a ballot. We elected a charter commission, and under the recommendations of our then city clerk, Bob Morgan, chairman of that charter commission, they recommended that in order to attract a better quality of candidate, that the amount of signatures been increased. Anyway, it was controversial back then. And the only reason I bring the 50 signatures up, for many years, that's what it took to get on the ballot for city council and school committee. In 1983, we added 5 district city councils, and we changed that whole formula. But today, in this COVID environment, where people are getting sick, many people are dying in this state, I'm deeply concerned about that. I'm deeply concerned about the access that potential candidates would have. You can't stop at supermarkets anymore. You can't go to different places. That for this municipal election, 2021, and I'm so glad to have a city manager who was a former state senator who understands this filing of a whole rule petition process, that the council, upon its request to our delegation, file a home rule petition asking for a suspension of Article 7, Section 74 of our city charter to allow that candidates be able to submit no more than 50 signatures to be certified to get their name on the ballot in this municipal year. It would eliminate personal contact. Now, when you collect 300 signatures, you're actually interacting with almost 450 people, sometimes 500 people, to get 300 good signatures. But in this municipal election, this is a one-time deal. I'm not asking to change the charter, just to suspend the charter in this municipal calendar coming up. If the council does it, I spoke with Representative O'Day, and we got the word out to Mike Moore and Harriet Chandler and the whole delegation. I know Representative O'Day is willing to submit it in our city's behalf. And this could be done through the legislature. They could have a public hearing. They could just do a voice vote. But it would be something that, in this climate, would be beneficial. And I wish the city manager well. I wish you all would be nice and safe. And, you know, every afternoon when I get the statistics from the state, I'm very nervous, but the idea of candidates out there interacting, people don't want to touch pens, papers, the lack of access to individuals, and people don't want to go, they don't want you at their door, knocking on their door for a signature. It's a tough time. So I ask the council to please, you know, look at the benefits of, you know, limiting the access, limit this particular year, and, you know, let's do this. Let's do this for public safety. Let's do this for the safety of the community and for candidates. And city manager, get well. We really are praying for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, AJ, next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just unmuted another call-in user. If all the people on phones could please state their names.
Okay, AJ, is that the last one? Or?
It's like I just unmuted the last call-in user, so if they could all state their names.
Nellie Medina.
Natalie Medina, perhaps?
Yeah, Nellie, if you want to give your name and state your residence. Okay.
Nellie Medina. Hi, my name is Nellie Medina, and I'm calling about item 11K. Wanted to make a statement about the hunger in the city. Not all organizations on the ground are provided with enough food to feed the people that they serve. There's a disparity amongst organizations, and my request is that there be more research done on who is actually on the ground, who has the most members in their groups, and who are not being served. There's a lot of hunger in the community, a lot of hunger in Worcester, and an organization like mine, PUMA, the Parents Union of Massachusetts, are struggling to feed our families. I have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go to two different towns and 4 different locations to have enough food to feed 120 people every Friday, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be included in all the relief efforts that are happening on the ground in the city. And if you want to combat hunger, then what has to be done is the recognition of those of us who've had our boots on the ground since day one, who are out there with triple masks on, with gloves on, risking our lives every day so that the people that we serve, you know, can live in dignity and their children don't go hungry. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like we got one more call-in user. I just unmuted them now. If you could please state your names.
Meg Burnell, Worcester, Mass.
I heard, was it Peg Grinnell?
Hi, I'm calling to speak about 11H on the possible turf at Foley Stadium. Right now I'm a coach, and I coach kids out on a grass turf. And as a city coach at Doherty, I would love to see a great facility that fits like the caliber of players we have in the city. Lately, like creating a schedule, I look at a schedule where I can play turf teams that would be outside the city and try to play away so that we can play the game the way it should be played. I just feel like the players and the kids in Worcester deserve like a better field. Right now it's torn up grass, divots everywhere, very dangerous, and this is what people come into the city to see. So I think we're losing a lot of kids who are going to play, outside of our city, who are going to play at a better facility. And I would love to see us invest in our high school athletics. I'd love to see us give the kids the type of facility that we deserve. I'd love to see the game rise up to the next level with our Central Mass athletics, and I would love, I would love to see, like, college coaches, when you reach out, they won't come watch a game unless it's on a turf facility. So our kids need to get to the next level of play, so they need to get off to the quarterfinals or, semifinals, or go play away on, another local facility in order to be seen. And I would just love to see us invest. And it's a beautiful facility, and I'd love to see it turfed, and it would just be amazing to, for the kids in Worcester. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ?
Mr. Mayor, that brings us to the end of the public participation. I can't recognize any other people.
Okay, thank you. So our next item is recess to executive session. We're going to hold that, or we're going to amend that to do the executive session on the first meeting in January 5th. If that's all right with everybody. And we'll do a roll call on that as amended.
Councilor Bergman? Yes. Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King? Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Murray Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Next, we have hearings of orders. The motion is to open the hearing for National Grid location on Main Street. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Murray Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell? Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Anybody opposed to this item? Hearing nobody opposed tonight, the motion is to close the hearing and to adopt on a roll call. Roll call.
Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Murray Carlson? Councilor Murray Carlson? Okay, Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. So we'll try to take some of these items together if you'd like, unless anybody has any questions. 9A, we're going to refer to the planning board. 9B, 9D, we'll refer to the Public Works Committee. 9E and 9F, we're going to refer to traffic and parking. Take those in the roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Murray Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. The next item is item 9G, is Bill Coleman's petition regarding suspension and reducing the number of signatures required by candidates for the 2021 municipal election, not to be more than 3 inches by the councilor, the council school committee for the safety of the public and for candidates during COVID-19. That's what we advertise on this. The recommendation is maybe we send this to the clerk for a recommendation back on the January meeting. And we have a discussion what the Secretary of State recommends. And I'm also hearing this might be an option for electronic signatures too, how that would play into this also. And so we have plenty of time to do this. And we'll report back from the clerk. That's okay. Everybody for the hearing.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Councilor King?
Yes. Just wondering if we could also, maybe the solicitor can ride along with this one in terms of the report, just to make sure that, we have all of our ducks in a row.
Sure, good idea. So we'll also send that both to the clerk and to the law department and Councilor Russell.
Mr. Chairman, I just asked that the clerk include information of what the reps and the senators and the other folks that were collecting signatures did this year, because they were also tied up in the pandemic and how it worked out for them.
Sure, that's a good idea. Okay, so collectively on a roll call for those 3 items, reports, roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes, so next items, we have Chairman's Orders 10A to 10E.
Mr. Chairman?
And Mr. Wally has to recuse himself on 10A, so we can do that separately. Councilor Rosen?
Just want to comment briefly on 10B, which came from our Public Service and Transportation Committee. We did have a public hearing about the MBTA's plans to cut commuter rail service to the city of Worcester and during the week and certainly on weekends and after 9 p.m. And I believe that their finance committee just had a hearing and they were a little more generous to Worcester than they thought they would be. And there will be some time, maybe minimal, but some train service, I believe, kept in Worcester on the weekends. So that's good news, even though it might be minimal, but at least it's some train service. But the chairman's order that we came up with, again, is that the city council and the city manager notify the governor of the Commonwealth, the city's local delegation, and the MBTA administration, once the threat of COVID-19 has diminished, that commuter rail service between Worcester and Boston, including on weekends and after 9 p.m., be fully restored. We'd like to see it expanded, but maybe that's asking too much, but certainly be fully restored to the previous levels, because so many people rely on that transportation. And we've all worked so hard on the council, the administration, the Chamber of Commerce, folks in the community, businesses, to get expanded rail service over the years. So again, I said this last time we talked about this on the council, that there's no way we should accept, for any long length of time, cuts in our commuter rail service. It certainly is unacceptable. So I hope that we can send this message on to the governor and the MBTA and our local delegation to help us out in the future. Vaccines are here, so we have to expect in several months that maybe COVID will dissipate enough. Times will be a lot safer. People will want to return to those trains, and we're going to need that train service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so we can take 10A out and vote B, C, D, and E on a roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell? Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes, so take, minus Councilor Wally, we'll take 10A on our roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally recused himself, and Mayor Petty.
Yes. We are now going to orders. Request city manager, request the police chief provide increased enforcement for the parking regulations on Princeton Street, where cars are parking on both sides of the street. Locations where only one side is permitted, impacting emergency vehicles' ability to reverse. Councilor Rivera. Also, if you are speaking, keep yourself on mute, please. Appreciate it. And, okay. Councilor Rivera, you're up. Council, we can't hear you for some reason. We still can't. It doesn't show you muted, so I don't know why.
It's not like, okay, I would unmute, but it would remute.
Yeah, mine does that too. I get, yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually a little funny. Is it telling us something? Yeah, pretty much. It just basically, as it reads in the sense that, there's a lot of concerns in the traffic of that area of the park. So especially now in the winter months, so there was some construction and there were some signs that were there. I did contact DPW to try to get the signs back, but there seems to be an expansion of people living on the streets, and that's caused a high amount of different cars in the area. So we just want to be able to just have enforcement, because the parking on both sides, people are just finding that they don't have anywhere to park. So they're kind of just parking on both sides. But the reality is they're only supposed to park on one side. And with the nursing home and with the families in the area, there's no way of, it's a difficulty for emergency vehicles to get up there. There's been, with the nursing home, delivery trucks are having trouble. And just resident as a whole, they send me pictures, and it's crazy the amount of cars that are on both sides. So we'd like to be able to put the signs back that are missing, and at the same time also maybe just request some traffic enforcement up there. Thank you.
Thank you. So motion is referred to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. The next item, request city manager provide council with a report regarding implications of Amazon location of the Green Mill site, including information on the neighborhood concerns that need to be addressed. We talked to Councilor Carlson about this in her district, and this is an important. I think this is an important issue. This is an important project. I support the project. I think it's a good project, but we need to be transparent on this to let people know exactly what's going on with the Amazon and the location there. A couple of issues, of course, is the traffic concerns that would have been brought up in the neighborhood. I know Councilor Carlson's trying to coordinate a neighborhood meeting later on this month, so that can be addressed, and that we need all the relevant information regarding that. My understanding is, from talking to some developers there, is that it appears that the traffic issue should be a lot less when that mall was when it was in its prime at that location. And also the environmental issues. We get a report on some of the environmental issues. I understand a lot of things have changed. A lot of code and zoning issues have changed since that mall was built. I understand that those issues are going to be addressed here too when that developer and Amazon get together on this project. And also look at have the assessor come back with a report on the valuation of that property. My understanding is there's going to be specialized equipment that goes into that building from if Amazon does go forth with the project, and how's that, what's the worth of that, and what's the evaluation of that property is going to be. And my understanding is going to be 300 vans at that location. What's the what's the tax implications of that for the city of Worcester. My understanding is that Amazon has, their goal is to have all electric vans going forward at a certain point in time. When is that time? When is that going to be applied here in the city of Worcester? And this is a good project in the sense that it's going to be reset on this Greendale location, at least 75 to 100 full-time positions, 50, 20 managers, making over $60,000. And for the workers there, it's going to be $15, at least $15 an hour plus benefits, which include 401k benefits, which includes a 50% match, health insurance, dental, and vision, which is worth something too for the people that will work there. And we have a lot of unemployed people in the state and across the country because of COVID-19. So this would be a good, I think, a good place for people to work and to provide for their families. And my understanding is too, when you like the traffic plan, like how the cars are going to, the vehicles will flow out of there. My understanding is, I'd like to see this in writing, is that the employees will drive around after 9 o'clock, and they will leave the company in between 10 and 11 a.m. and return sometime between 7 and 9 p.m. And 80% of that traffic will go, 80% of that traffic from them will go 290 eastbound, and 14% will go 190 northbound, and 4% will come into the city of Worcester. So I think it's good to get that in writing, a good from the manager, from working with Amazon, so we can have a good, transparent conversation with the neighborhood and other residents here in the city of Worcester. It's important that we get the facts down completely right on this, and on all aspects, the jobs, the environmental concerns, the assessor get his information on what he projects that property will be valued at, so we can have this discussion going forward. I think Peter Dunn is on the line. Peter, Mr. Dunn, have I missed anything that we should know about on the project or with Amazon?
Mr. Chairman, no, I think that covers it.
Okay, Councilor Carlson, followed by Councilor Wally.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I think, as you said, the issue here really is about transparency. Last week, I was on a call with the planning board with Amazon. We were on there for 5 hours listening to the concerns of the neighborhood and some Worcester residents. I think that hopefully we have a meeting that will take place right after Christmas with the neighborhood and some of the residents who had some concerns. And as you said, I mean, we listened to some of the concerns there certainly were the traffic patterns. And in talking with Mr. Dunn and some of the folks from Amazon and some others from our city talking about the traffic plan, part of that really just needs to be better explained to the public for them to understand really what is happening with this traffic plan that they have. The other piece of this certainly is, I think, we, meaning the city, along with Amazon, probably could do a much better job with working together and creating a community partnership to make sure that our folks here in the city of Worcester and partnering with folks like over at Mass Hire certainly would be helpful. As you know, this council has always said, we're very supportive of all of our developers, but they certainly need to make sure that they employ our folks. I understand about, we talk about there's a potential for 500 jobs. There's not 500 full-time jobs. We clearly understand that. The amount of jobs that will be full-time, yes, they are going to be paying those folks in the $15 range along with some benefits. But again, I think a piece of this and what the community is really looking to see is the environmental impact, the traffic pattern impact, And again, as we talk about that it will be less traffic, let's not kid ourselves. That mall's been closed, almost closed, for a lot of years. So it is a little bit different than it has been. We know what the capacity is. There's no doubt we know what the capacity is. But I just think that it will be great, and Amazon has agreed to do this community meeting, which I'm very happy about. So I look forward to doing the community meeting to hopefully come to some conclusion with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wally, followed by, I think, King, did you have your hand up? I think then Council Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Amazon today came out and announced they're also building a facility at the Airport Industrial Park. And of course, you know, the location at the Airport Industrial Park is certainly different than the Greendale Mall site. I think if you look at the industrial park, the use is certainly compatible with a warehouse that, again, Amazon, I believe, is proposing to build, and I think they have started building. So I'd like to offer a friendly amendment. If you could include potentially information back from the manager, if appropriate, again, knowing that the site is very different at the Airport Industrial Park, with information related to that development as well in his report.
Sure, I think, yeah, it's important. We should get a complete analysis of the whole process here regarding Amazon. And also how, and I forgot one thing, how does the Springdale facility or the airport facility receive their goods? Like, what's the transportation on that part too? So.
Great. One more point, Mr. Mayor, if I will. I'm not speaking to the Greendale Mall, but specifically to the Airport Industrial Park. I certainly support the project. You know, if we're looking now at an unemployment rate that is higher than it's been in years, I think it's going to be important to offer these jobs over the next few years. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Much appreciated. So we have Councilor King is next, called by Councilor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to sign on to this item. I appreciate it. Just a couple of comments. You know, I certainly appreciate the idea that it sounds like, in terms of transparency and communication, that Amazon is making attempts to do exactly that, as referenced by Councilor Merrill Carlson, indicating that there was quite a lengthy meeting where some of these issues were addressed. And I can certainly appreciate the concerns of the neighborhood. I, too, however, can remember the heyday, and I know it was quite some time ago, but I remember that very distinctly when Greendale Mall was up and bumping. So I appreciate this order, and you know, the only thing that I would add, perhaps as a separate order or as an amendment, that request that the administration make sure that we are appraised as a council of any potential meetings where we could be in attendance without any violation of open meeting laws. I'm certainly interested in attending and being a part of this process. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Councilor King. Councilor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Greendale Mall is in District 2. It's often confused for being in District 1. So by nature of that, I've had a lot of calls and fielded a lot of calls on, you know, what's happening over here. I'd like to sign on to the order, and I appreciate the offer to, you know, have a separate meeting to promote transparency around any issues or concerns of the residents in 2 and 1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Rose. And Councilor Toomey.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to sign on, but I'd also like to also include some of the concerns that I've been reading about Amazon and making sure that we're on top of everything. The working conditions of some folks, and I know that Milford did have traffic issues as well. And also ensure that while they're not asking for a TIF, that's great, but to also talk to them and recognize the folks in our community. I feel they need to have good representation of employees that reflect our community. So it would be good to have a conversation with them about that and their goals as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think everybody wants to sign on then, and amend that to include everybody. Also amend and include Councilor Wally's regarding the airport location is amendment, and also Councilor King provides any potential neighborhood meetings on the issue. Collectively on a roll call. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, our next item is Councilor Colorio, request that the city manager provide city council update concerning previously adopted law on March 17, 2020, relative including a military discount as part of the discounts. Discounts for senior students, juniors, and millennials offered at the Green Hill Golf Course. Councilor Colorio.
I just need to recuse myself.
Okay, Councilor recuse herself. Mr. Manager, you have your hand up? Or is Councilor Colorio on? Councilor Colorio?
Yes, I am. I would like to hear, just get the update through the chair from the city manager. I know I had some conversation. I don't know if Mr. Antonelli's on the phone, but we had a conversation a couple months back. And he said that it was going to be adopted into this year's, but I still have people calling me every week if they're up there asking if the military discount is started yet, and it doesn't appear to me that it has. So I just thought we could have an update from the city manager or Mr. Antonelli and see where it's at so I can then tell my constituents.
Sure, Mr. Manager.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Antonelli tells me that it went into effect at the end of the summer. So it is in effect, but we'll send a written report to the council for the next meeting so you have the particulars of it.
So thank you, Mr. City Manager, through the chair. So the people that asked if there was a military discount last week, and they said no, there was not. Do we have some miscommunication there through the chair?
Mr. Manager?
We must. So I would have them reach out to Assistant Commissioner Antonelli directly, because I talked to him today about this item, and he told me it was in place at the end of the summer in August. So, if there's some confusion there, we should straighten that out, but according to him, it's in place.
Okay. So we'll send that to the
Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Who's that, Councilor Rose?
Yeah,
Yep,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd like to sign on to this order, Mr. Chairman. This came through our Parks Committee months back, and for whatever reason, there continues to be confusion about, this finally being actualized. And so I'd like to sign on, and I'll certainly share this with my residents and constituents as well, that this is in effect, so that we can clear up any miscommunications that may have transpired. Thank you.
Okay, so as amended, we will send to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman? Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera accused herself. Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Nick, I'm a yes too. I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me.
Yes, Councilor, we recorded you as a yes. Thank you.
Councilor Bergman, okay. Next item is request standing committee on traffic and parking review policy and procedures. Number 693, relative to towed vehicles from private property, the Worcester Police Department, and Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 266, Section 120D, relative to removal of motor vehicles from private ways or property, penalties, liability for removal and storage, charges of lease of the vehicle. Councilor Colorio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just at a meeting reviewing the new parking plan for the ballpark area, and what came, someone had mentioned to me about the private lots. There's a lot of private lots, a lot of private areas to park along that area. and some have some signage and some don't have signage. So I got to thinking, if, you know, you're coming out of the ballpark, if you park illegally, not that, you know, people would intentionally park illegally, but if they did and their car got towed, is the proper signage there for the vehicle so people will know where their car is being towed to? So then I looked into this a little bit, and I know there is, I don't know if Mr. Pottle attached the Mass General Laws, Chapter 266, and also to the policy and procedures of 693, but I thought it would be a perfect time, since we are focusing on the ballpark area, to review these in parking and traffic and make sure that there's some consistency and some, you know, enforcement, so people have the correct signage to prevent people, especially out-of-towners, coming back to their car in not having a car there because they've parked in an illegal space. So I thought this was a good time to start this process and start to have a discussion about it. Thank you.
So we'll send that to the Standing Committee on Traffic and Parking, along with Massachusetts General Laws, along with the current policy. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, 11E, request city manager and appropriate staff investigate the 15-minute city concept as a future plan for Worcester as we adapt to the new normal. Councilor Toomey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, as we've been talking about, you know, the impact of COVID on our community, we just had a conversation about transportation being reduced. There's basically a movement afoot to have a 15-minute city that mayors all over the world are talking about. And it's really going back to history. Back, you know, centuries ago, there were smaller communities where people could walk to work. They could, or bike for those that were more urban and a flatter environment. And they could go to the supermarket. They could go to the pharmacy. They could go to the different stores, all within a 15-minute radius. So we've got a lot of things in place, and we're working towards. There's also, you know, a green element to this as well. It's all, we can roll all of these elements into it. The most important thing is that one of the things that's occurred to me is that so many of our citizens that have lost jobs in the service industry. And so retraining folks for new jobs that are close by to their home reduces impact on them having to find transportation, et cetera. So creating these little centers with those jobs there would be part of the plan. And so the whole purpose is to essentially have everything that you would need, work, you know, some restaurants, shops, schools, healthcare, and leisure within a 15-minute trip. I know that downtown is in pretty good shape, except we probably could use more supermarkets or food markets. It doesn't have to be a supermarket. I think that's part of the whole concept that we're trying to get away from, the super stores. But it's basically improving the folks' quality of life and also providing different opportunities for them to provide for their families as well, by engaging businesses that would be able to have smaller centers and be able to, so many people working at home now, and so you could have centers, and I think we actually have a few. I think there's a couple of job sharing, work sharing spaces out there. So
working with that and what we've got going and utilizing this plan could certainly help us come back to a new normal, because we're never going back to what we had. It's just not going to happen. So being forward thinking, I think, would be very helpful.
Okay. So we can send that to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. 11F, request city manager explore the strength of the Wi-Fi on Salisbury Street from the Worcester Holden line to Assumption University. Councilor Rose, this has been on the calendar for years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it's. I've recently learned that this has been up a few times, but I'm hoping that Eileen Kazarupal has a trick up her sleeve and an effort to kind of help us over here on this side of the district. Literally, when you enter into the city from Holden, you begin to lose Wi-Fi as you head down Salisbury towards Assumption. It's come up quite a bit in recent neighborhood meetings, and it's come up with a handful of residents that actually Salisbury, the opposite side of Salisbury, is actually District 5, and so a lot of people think that that's District 1 side. Got a handful of calls from some residents on Barrow Road in particular about this issue, and hopes that we could do something to remedy it, but also being mindful of the fact that this has been up a few times, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good order. Thank you, Councilor Rosie. We lost you there for a second. You're pretty close to that area, so good job. Okay, so we will send that to the to the manager. Roll call. Councilor Toomey, I'm sorry, Councilor Toomey, do you want to speak on that?
I have a question. Is it cell service or Wi-Fi?
He has Wi-Fi on here.
Should it be cell service as well?
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a amendment to include cell service in this order, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So to the manager as amended. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request city manager provide city council report concerning the increase and/or decrease of businesses in District 1 over the past 3 years, in effort to plan around any areas of market vacancies. Councilor Rose.
Mr. Chairman, there are not a lot of business nodes in District 1, West Boylston Street, piece of Lincoln Street, and, we've done a really nice job over the last couple of years of adding, some businesses over to Brook Street and that area on a West Mountain. And so we've seen some businesses on West Boylston Street shut down a little bit, and, just thinking about because we don't have many business nodes, that we can actually do a really nice marketing plan or come up with some type of business plan to market some of the vacancies or the vacant areas in the district. So just trying to get a sense of, what has happened or what's transpired over the last couple of years. I think, my eye test, what I see, sees some improved development in areas throughout that, but seeing it in print and making a plan around that with Peter Dunn, Economic Development Team, is something that I look forward to, depending on what comes out of the report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor King?
Yeah, I'd like to sign on to this. I appreciate the initiative that's here in this order. Makes sense. I know some of the things that we've talked about over the past few months. One of those things has been about the marketing approach that the city has been taking. So being honored to sign on to this, and I look forward to seeing that report as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so to the manager, as amended, roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request city manager consider turfing the sports field as used back of Foley Stadium. Councilor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We hear a lot about lack of space for sports entities, particularly our high school, middle school, school sports. The option to turf this area where the JV fields are, soccer fields, are in the back of Foley, just creates a little bit of diversity for us in terms of what we can offer over here. And so looking at this space and identifying the space as an area that could be turfed to be able to, provide that, different sports, whether it's field hockey or whatever it is, you name it, I think makes a lot of sense, creating more options for us overall in the sports field realm. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to sign on, and I'm not going to reiterate what Councilor Rose eloquently said, but I agree with all his reasons. So, good order.
Okay. So we will, Councilor Toomey.
Mr. Chair, I also would like to sign on. My daughters play field hockey and it's definitely needed. Thank you.
Okay. So as amended, we'll send that to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson? Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, we are next. On the next item is a request city manager to consider placing cameras on some form of surveillance up at Bancroft Tower. Councilor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I by no means am suggesting that the city has not done an incredible job up at Bancroft Tower. Commissioner Antonelli, a revision to how late the park could be open from 10 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Officer Carlson has made it her personal responsibility. Lisa Carlson being up there and working up there. We got no smoking signs. We have done an incredible amount of work over there over the last couple of years. I'm just requesting that we consider an additional element, an additional safety element, because we know that it can't be watched at all times. And I think that having some type of surveillance up there will certainly negate or cause some worry of people doing any wrongdoing up over at the tower. In addition to that, there are just so many people in that area, in that neighborhood, Steve Boyso and others who do take it personally, the cleaning of the park and making sure that it looks great and it's upkept. And I think a reward for a lot of the hard work that happens up there from the residents to provide them with this additional element of safety, I think will go a real long way. I know that the Greater Hammond Heights Neighborhood Association might be bringing something forward as well, so I look forward to that. This came out of our recent Saxon Road neighborhood meeting this past Wednesday, and again, a nice reward for the people who are doing an incredible job taking care of the park, and maybe able to give Officer Carlson a little bit of break from having to be up there all the time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Colorio.
Thank you. I think I signed on to this, but if I didn't, please put my name on it. But I have to, I'm not going to repeat what Councilor Rose said because I agree with him full-heartedly. Growing up right next to Bancroft Tower, I live there still now. There's a lot of, one of the things that we forget is there's a lot of different roads that enter into the tower area, and also too from Mass Ave, you can cut through the woods right there, and the kids go right through the woods, and it's, you know, it's not as visible, so people can come from all over to enter into that area. I totally support this. I know in the summer I put something on similar, maybe some additional policing and a couple other orders on, because what we were having was having a lot of traffic going up with the, I don't know, the AV, what are the bikes called? The ones, I'm not sure what they're, yes. And they were going up the road, and they was making a lot of noise on Farnham Street, you know, on Mass Ave. And so I think this is something that's long overdue in the area. And I know the people in the area that live right next to the tower take a lot of pride in it. And I think they would really appreciate if the people, they could have a little bit more of peace and quiet, especially at night when they're, you know, trying to go to bed and people are sneaking into the park and et cetera, et cetera. So I support this order, and I hope we can come through on this. Thank you.
Okay, we'll send it to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Berkman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. The next item, request that the Standing Committee on Public Service and Transportation invite to upcoming meeting representatives from the Worcester Disability Community, Director of the Human Rights and Disability for the city's taxi and ride-sharing companies, and the WRTA to determine how equitable, accessible, on-demand public transportation in Worcester can be expanded. 2019, the transportation network companies provide over 1 million trips in Worcester, but currently there are 0 wheelchair accessible TNC vehicles, and while Worcester has 110 licensed cabs, that includes only 1 wheelchair accessible vehicle. Councilor Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as we found out tonight, that one wheelchair accessible taxi is not on the road at the moment. And several years ago, we had 2, and they were functioning frequently, and they did a good job. We're down to 1, and now with maintenance needed, that one isn't available. So we're looking for equitable, accessible, and on-demand public transportation, and that's they've been discussing it. Members of our disability community have been discussing it, I guess, for a couple of years. I just found out recently when they sent an email to the members of the Public Service and Transportation, and maybe some other members of the council got that email, and I've talked to several of their members, and it's been something they've been working on, and certainly something that they need and deserve, and I think our committee and our council and our administration can help them out. I've talked to the RTA on this too, and the WRTA has applied for a grant for a special vehicle that would be an on-demand vehicle. The RTA presently has the paratransit, but you have to make reservations at least a day in advance for that, and it sometimes picks up 1 or 2 other people, and that changes the route, it changes the times you might have. You might be going to a doctor's appointment, but there's a couple of others using the same van, so it's not quite the same. As some of our prominent members of the disability community mentioned during the public portion of our meeting tonight, Boston has made some great strides with an accessible transportation system, especially for folks in wheelchairs. And, you know, Worcester can certainly follow their lead, and I think our committee can do a lot to help these folks out, and, you know, we can hear their interest on this, and they can be good lobbyists with us to see if we can expand the accessible transportation network here in the city. So I request that we send that to Public Service and Transportation.
Thank you. Councilor Wally, followed by Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to sign on, and I think Councilor Rosen's the right person to drive this issue, as he has on other transportation issues. But the lack of wheelchair accessible taxis and ride-sharing cars, inexcusable and certainly frustrating when you have people like Joe Belil and Mike Kennedy advocating, and they've been advocating for years on this topic. You know, it's shocking that the lack of accessible vehicles for those who need the transportation. So just want to sign on And as I said, Councilor Rosen is the right person to drive this issue. Thank you.
Sure, and I'd like to sign on myself to this. I think this is an important issue. I think everybody's going to sign on. And I know that when I was chair of Public Service and Transportation, we discussed the same issue, Gary. And,
wow. It's been around a long time.
It goes up to flows, and I know the gas companies don't have the business they had years ago. I'm glad you brought in the ride share, WRTA. This is a community effort. And if you get the ride share people there, I think that's important too.
Yeah.
The Ubers and the Lyfts and anybody else who provides transportation here in the city of Worcester. And use the model from Boston, even what they're doing. So, okay. So we will put everybody on. Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say Councilor Rosen has certainly come full circle on this. I'm happy to sign on to this as well. You know, this was eye-opening, Mr. Chairman. When you think about how this impacts quality of life, when you think about how this impacts folks' accessibility to our city, to their families, to jobs, to opportunity, and we can do better. And I think this is a roadmap to exactly that. Again, happy to sign on and appreciate the leadership on this issue.
Yep. Councilor Rose, I think we got Councilor Toomey Rivera. Councilor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As many are aware, I'm a president and CEO of a nonprofit entity that serves developmentally disabled and intellectually disabled youth through young adults to elderly. We were just awarded a contract to come into the city of Worcester to provide help and support to almost 700 families. And I'm really, really excited to be doing work in Worcester, of course, and I'm really, really excited to have the advocacy of Councilor Rosen and this body around making sure, to Councilor King's point, that we're addressing and improving the quality of life of all the folks in the city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Toomey, followed by Rivera.
Mr. Chair, as somebody who has issues herself with some disability aspects of physical disability, it's incredibly important that people understand how difficult it is for folks who don't have their own transportation to get around. And, you know, that's part of my whole discussion previously about having things closer and more nearby. But I think that this is a great way to address these issues, especially for an undisturbed community here in Worcester that has not received the attention or the amenities that they should have. So I'm very happy to sign on to this and offer any support I can give the councilor on this order.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rivera.
Yeah, I just want to thank Councilor Rosen. This is an exceptional order. I think it's great leadership. It really, you know, I read this and you had to kind of just say, wow, talk about checking your ability privilege. It's things that we don't think about because we haven't had to think about it. And that's actually the understanding of privilege. And I really, really want to thank Councilor Rosen for really putting this forward. And when we talk about equity, we need to be having this type of conversation. And this is crucial. This is important. It is sad that, as the mayor stated, that's something that he was talking about when he was chairman. He's been the mayor for the last 5 terms, so it just goes to show, and that it's, you know, we're entering 2021 and that we're still having this conversation. And so it's really about how do people understand equity in transportation, checking our privilege and ability, and really understanding how do we really think for the needs of others. But I definitely am really, really happy to sign on, proud, and really want to thank Councilor Rosen for his leadership on this.
Thank you. So everybody wants to sign on, I think, and so we'll send that to the standing committee as amended. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell, Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Tully.
Yes. Okay, you got Councilor Russell there?
Yes, I do.
Okay. In light of the 55 million Americans presently struggling with hunger during the pandemic, resulting in huge lines of cars that drive through food banks and growing subset of Americans stealing food to survive, the City Manager provided council with a report concerning the state of food insecurity in Worcester, what steps still need to be taken by a caring city to make sure that no residents go hungry. Councilor Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've probably all seen the news reports of long lines of cars at food banks. And most of the people in those cars, I guess, have never been at a food bank. So we've got a whole new group of people who have lost jobs or had cut wages or businesses way down, businesses they own or where they work. Some have gone out of business. So there's many, many reasons, especially during the COVID times here, why people are going hungry and their families and their children are going hungry. And I assume Worcester is no different. We haven't heard much about it in the city of Worcester, which maybe no news is good news. I just don't know. And then I was surprised to read online that so many stores, supermarkets, department stores like Walmart and Target that also have groceries, they've had a huge increase in theft of groceries and even baby food and products for babies. People can't afford to buy food, so some are waiting in long lines of maybe thousands of cars we've seen on TV in major cities across the country, and others are taking it into their own hands and they're stealing food from different stores, and we certainly don't want that. I mean, we think of the musical and the book, the novel Les Mis, where Jean Valjean stole a loaf of bread, and I think for 15, 16 years he was in jail. I know it's just a novel, but we don't want to see folks in the city of Worcester have to get food through stealing. We have a great food bank in the Worcester area, and we have great social service agencies that have food pantries. But we did hear from a caller earlier today who mentioned that her social service agency is having difficulty getting food and providing it, the whole logistics of it, to her clients, the folks who deal with her agency. So I just wanted to hear from the administration, if we can soon, what's been happening with the food chain here in the city of Worcester and food insecurity. I think the last time I remember the council talking about it was a few years ago when we had college students who weren't eating properly, didn't have the money to afford food plans and so on. But this is even a bigger problem, and I'm sure it includes some college students too. So if we can get that report, I know Worcester is a caring city, and whatever we have to do as a council and as an administration and as a city, I just know people will come through if we have to supply more food to folks in our city. We don't want any family, any individuals to go hungry. So let's see what we can do. Maybe the administration will say, everything's good. I just have a feeling that's probably not it. But whatever we have to do, this caring city will do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Rose, followed by Councilor Rivera, by Councilor Toomey, Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to sign on to this order. This past Thanksgiving, a bunch of us came together to help support a few different nonprofit organizations who are really struggling. A lot of individuals, in the city over the years have relied a lot on the schools for their own turkey drives and their own turkey donations and so on. And as a result of the schools being closed, couple of us came together and were able to provide over 200 Thanksgiving meals to a number of different organizations throughout the city. And it was bittersweet because it was really nice to be able to offer that, but it was just not nearly enough. it was one of those things that was a bit disheartening that, we went through this whole entire process and we were only able to scratch the surface of what the need is. In my district, Quinsigman Community College has a food pantry. We have young kids who are choosing books over meals. They struggle with significant food insecurity. I look forward to the report. I look forward to being a contributor. I agree with Councilor Rosen in the sense that, if there's some data, insider information that's out there, this city, regardless of where you land or stand, is going to come together in support of making sure that no one goes without a meal or that no one goes hungry, as evidenced by what we were recently able to achieve in a very minimal level. And so this is a really nice order. I really appreciate getting the report back, and I really appreciate looking at the evidence that comes back so that we can be as helpful as possible in supporting the administration and others around making sure that no one has to choose a mail over a book or choose a mail over other things, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I apologize to Councilor Rosen. I think he had a question to the manager. Councilor Rosen?
No, I didn't. I was just going to refer it to the manager. No question.
He's going to refer? Okay, that's fine. Okay, Councilor, so we had Councilor Rivera, Toomey, and King.
Yeah, I just want to sign on. And there's so much work that's being done regarding food insecurities. And so this is just again, although there's so much that's happening, I still think it's a great order. Just because it continues the conversation. So just last week, I want to say Thursday, I believe it was Thursday or Friday, the days are kind of coming into each other. I was in 2 meetings kind of back to back regarding food insecurities, and one with an organization and another with Worcester Together. We have a whole group that is working on this, and just in relation to COVID. But COVID has helped to, if there's a silver lining at all to this, it's really helped to surface so many issues of disparities and inequities, and the issue of food insecurity, and the fact that also we have to be, this goes right along, not just with our CHIP, with our public health, but also really looking at our green Worcester, really looking at sustainability, urban farming, and really supporting, urban agriculture, just a number of different things that we're working on regarding food sustainability. And it's a real issue, and people think it's not happening here, but it is. If you look at I had an opportunity to look at the lines in South Worcester. They have, their numbers have grown like astronomical with the need. So I just think this is, although there's so much work that's being done, I still think there's a great order I want to sign on, because it just continues the conversation about how do we, and it's great to be able to look at how we're working collectively. I was on the phone with Together. There must have been, 20 plus of us on that organizations, individuals on that call. So it's real, it's an issue, and I know Worcester is doing really, really some amazing work, but I really still think, I think one of the things that we want to do is really think about what's our next step, especially on sustainability, which is really important, and that's where we're seeing there's a huge issue happening now during COVID. Again, great leadership on Councilor Rosen.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Councilor Toomey, King, and Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly want to sign on to this, and thank you, Councilor Rosen, for your thoughtful order. One of the things that, and I don't know how we can determine this, but there are still so many people that are not reaching out for help, that are not going to the food pantries or getting help because of they've never had to before. And there's, the sense of pride, they don't want to admit it, but we have a lot of seniors who've never had to rely on others for their food. And now they aren't able to support themselves either. So, you know, I think we're doing a lot. I think there's much more that needs to be done. And one of the things I do want to say is that I've noticed on Facebook there are a couple of neighbors that have little shelves out in front of their house, and they have extra food there. So that's something that, you know, people don't need to stand in a line to get that. I think that's a really nice neighborly thing to do. It's not going to, you know, solve all this, but, you know, that's one small way that people are helping out, number one. And number two, you know, I think it's really important, you know, as Councilor Rivera mentioned about the sustainability. One of the things that I did last year was I planted a garden, and I didn't have a lot of space to put it in, so I did a very creative garden using gutters and hanging it on a wall. So, you know, there's lots of things that we can do to educate people, and I'd really like to see if we could put together something from our Parks Department to put together some videos on sustainable gardening and creative ways to garden on your own. So that folks could be more sustainable in their own homes. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be very brief. First, once again, kudos to social worker Rosen. He came in a teacher and he's going out a social worker. I'm very happy about that. That being said, you know, again, food insecurity is here. It's certainly exacerbated by COVID. When you think about folks needing to have their basic needs met during this pandemic, during normal standard times as well, but making sure that folks have their food, shelter, clothing is important as ever right now in terms of their own self-regulation and their own self-health. So this couldn't be more timely, Mr. Chairman. I'm honored to sign on to this. And, you know, I mean, just a day ago, the folks from SEIU, a number of social workers out in Somerville, you know, had a food drive. And this wasn't just for folks in their community. They actually shared with Worcester. And they drove it out here to the Rock of Salvation Pentecostal Church and shared. And I think that's what this is all about. And I think it's what our city's about, our Commonwealth. Folks linking together to make sure people's needs are met. And it's certainly a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, food insecurity is not such a nice thing. But this is certainly in the right direction. And again, social worker Rosen, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor King. Councilor Merrill Carlson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to say thank you to Gary for doing this. This is something that I think a lot of folks don't, you know, really realize how much this is happening. I know for someone like myself in my district, I mean, once a month I collect a truckload of food and bring it to a couple of the areas in my district. Again, you know, food insecurity happens every day in the city of Worcester. It's this time of year, people are great about collecting food to give to the different shelters and to the different families. But I think, as Councilor Rivera said, there's a lot going on in the city of Worcester. But I also think that at this point, you know, COVID has just exacerbated this to a point that we really should look at this and how well we are doing. There's many things that are going on. I know the AFL-CIO on a national level as well as on a state level is going around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and feeding many members, because as we know, we look at the folks from IATSE the folks in the entertainment industry, and many others who have lost their jobs, and now unemployment is going by the wayside. So this order is very timely, and love to see something come back to see what we are doing, because I know there's a lot of groups who are really working, and they've done yeoman's work on feeding people. Thank you.
Thank you, and I too like to sign on, Councilor Rosen, and it's a good order and timely. And I meet with the Worcester Together group every Thursday. I said your work is just beginning, and I think it is, and they've done wonderful work. All those nonprofits getting together, and all the people, all the different organizations, as Councilor Murkowski and Councilor Rivera was speaking to, getting together and really providing for this community. And all these nonprofits are going to be needed, these organizations going forward, to really make sure we sustainability takes place here in the city of Worcester. At least we have the infrastructure in place, and we just have to make sure it all works. So with that, we'll send that to the manager. Councilor Colorio, did you want to speak? I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. I want to sign on to this, but one of the things that I think is really important here is that, like Councilor Collison says, she brings a truckload of food to different organizations. I know myself, when I've done some donations to different organizations, some of them are filled and they don't need it. It would be really good if we had maybe some kind of a list that went out, maybe through the city website. Maybe this could be a friendly amendment to this order, that maybe could post weekly. The woman that spoke earlier, she needed some food that she could, and people could go to the website and say, oh, okay, she needs meat, she needs canned goods, she needs pastries, whatever she needs. That way, other organizations can go to the city website. I don't know if that's something we can do. I'm just thinking about maybe a more comprehensive overview of what's happening, because it seems like through my colleagues, they have many different areas where they do work with. And I think it's important that we could look at this together and see what areas may need some help. So I would ask if maybe we can add that on, and just so we can have more of a overview of what organizations need the donations.
Okay. Councilor Russell?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to sign on too. I want to thank Councilor Rosen for bringing this to the attention of the council and to the agenda tonight. I would also, as a separate item, request that the city manager provide a report, if he would, sometime soon, of what interaction he has had, or the city departments has had, with the Worcester Together Fund. And if there's any way of trying to put together, and I know this is something I've talked about at length many times on the council floor, and many of us have talked about this at length, but what we can do to try and solve this issue, and also try and help the restaurants in the city of Worcester that are basically starving themselves, and to try and put those two needs together, and to try and get the Worcester Together Fund or any other resource that we can have to try and bring these all together, and to try and accomplish two things at the same time. Not only try and help those who need to feed their families, but also the folks in the restaurant business across the city that would love to get some orders, I'm sure, for multiple takeouts, if they're not getting it already.
Okay, and I know we do something now with the restaurants, and I've been instrumental in my office work with the state and Councilor Rivera and everyone to get this done. But Mr. Manager, do you want to elaborate on that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to put this in the report, but the Together for Worcester Fund does provide hot meals to folks who are tested positive for COVID, and they use local restaurants to do it, and they move it around to different restaurants, making sure there's, diverse offerings, because there's a diverse need out there in terms of cultural backgrounds for folks who are quarantined either because of an exposure or because of an actual COVID diagnosis. So literally tens of thousands of dollars has been pumped back into our local restaurants and small businesses through the Together for Worcester Fund. That's exactly how they do it.
Right. And, well, Mr. Chairman, I look forward to the report, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we could amp that up in any way we can to help the families that not only those who have been directly affected by COVID, but those who need help in putting food on their tables and try to get as many of our restaurants involved.
Yeah, and I think
and maybe not even the Together Fund, Mr. Chairman. Maybe whatever. Maybe there's other things that the manager, through some of the CARES Act money, is available. Whatever we can do. But this is a great order that Councilor Rosen has put on, and I just I'm happy to support it, happy to sign on, and happy to get more information about what we can do to help the restaurants as well as those who need the food.
Sure, I think the manager's put, I think, 100,000 towards that from the CARES Act, and working with Tim Garvin, Gina Cueto, and Casey Burns from the Worcester Together Group, and I've coordinated meetings with the governor's office, lieutenant governor, and the secretaries. And Worcester's, we have a good infrastructure in place, so they come to Worcester, and a lot of some of the big restaurant owners out of Boston and stuff have offered their services here too. So as the need rises, so it's been a pretty good coordinated effort. So I think a good detailed report coming out of the manager's office, letting everybody know what we do is important. Councilor Waller?
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, I'd like to sign on.
Sure. So we will, Councilor Bergman sign on. So everybody wants to sign on, and we will send this as amended to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, next item is request city manager request chief development officer develop a best practices procedures to notify the council when the planning board applications are first receive review that have a significant impact on vehicle traffic patterns. Councilor Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked a little bit tonight about some of the neighborhood concerns regarding some of the more publicized projects we have. Of course, one at Amazon's got one at Greendale Mall, former Greendale Mall, and now we hear there's another Amazon project at the airport. And I think a lot of what we've talked about tonight and what we've heard from people in neighborhoods is concerned probably over lack of information more than anything else. What I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize is these large-scale projects go in front of the planning board. Oftentimes, particularly the one at the Greendale Mall, and I suspect the one that's going to be coming at the airport, they don't really need much approval, pretty much as a matter of right. So it isn't a question of stopping a project per se, because legally, and that's not what's going to happen. It's more of a question of trying to tweak out the concerns of the neighborhood. I think we should get out ahead of it. I think we shouldn't be addressing the concerns of the neighbors, the neighborhoods, after the plans have already been announced to the public, when they've been sitting in the planning board perhaps for weeks or even months. I think we would not only help the neighbors understand better what the projects entail, but we'd actually help the developers by not creating a reputation, warranted or unwarranted, about hiding their plans. So my thought would be that the planning board, whether or not planning board approval is needed or not, should let us know as councilors when they encounter a project that's going to come before them that they know could have an impact on neighborhood traffic. I think that benefits everyone.
Thank you. So we send that to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman? Councilor Bergman?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's a yes, I think. Okay.
Okay, Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Request city manager, request Commissioner Public Works and Parks provide the city council report concerning the current condition of the Rogers Kennedy Memorial at Elm Park. Councilor Bergman. don't think you're on.
Is that better?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. It's doing the same thing to me it was doing to you and Councilor Rivera. It's clicking the mute on and off. I'm sorry about that. So on this particular order, many of us are familiar with the Rogers Kennedy Memorial and Monument, and it dates back to 1929. It's had work done on it in the past. It's kind of in a unique location, although it's a nice location. It's set back far enough where it's not always obvious. And unless you drive by the area frequently, you don't always see it. I happen to have noticed lately that it seems to be going back to somewhat of a state of disrepair. I know there was a lot of work done on it in the early 2000s. There was a lot of money raised, and my understanding is there's money that was set aside. I don't know how frequently DPW visits our monuments, but I think this is an appropriate time to visit this particular one. It's coming up on its 100th anniversary later in the decade. And last time the repairs were done on, it's my understanding there was over $600,000 worth of repairs that were privately raised through fundraising efforts, probably because the damage had gone on too long. So the suggestion would be let's try to nip it in the bud, minimize the cost of repairing it. I will say that this was a nationally recognized piece of public art when it was first donated in 1929, and it's particularly appropriate to address it, I think, in 2020, the year celebrating the 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote. Because unlike many public art sculptures in the day, this was one of the first, if not the first, where the man and the woman depicted on top of the sculpture in monument are exactly the same height. And usually the male dominates the woman, and the symbolism is never that men and women have contributed equally to the culture and the society of America, and particularly of Worcester. So I'd like to see DPW take a good look at it. I know Historical Commission and possibly Preservation Worcester and the Art Museum all had involvement early on in making sure that it got restored appropriately. So perhaps we could get a report on the condition that it's in now. And I would just only add one other thing. When I go by there, and I think others would agree, the lighting is rather difficult as far as seeing the statue on top. For those that aren't that familiar, there are a bunch of panels that are almost at street level depicting various activities in the early days of American life. But the monument on top is of a man and a woman, bronze monument. It's almost impossible to see that man and woman on top with the lighting that exists now. So we all know there's going to be a lot of changes made to Newton Hill. And this is sitting right there, so perhaps DPW could also look at better ways to illuminate the monument as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have Councilor Wally, and if you want to speak, followed by Rivera, Toomey, and Mack, all set. And
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Bergman and I had a conversation today with John Budd, who was one of the co-chairs back in 2006, who raised roughly $600,000 to make the improvements. And when they raised the money, they created a fund at the Greater Worcester Community Foundation specifically designated to make repairs to the monument as well as improve the landscaping around. So there is money available to make those improvements. But I think, as Councilor Bergman appropriately noted, over the next few years, the landscaping or the actual physical site is going to significantly change because of the new Doherty High School. So I think it's going to be prudent for us as a city to make sure that this monument is well taken care of and well maintained. And as Councilor Bergman mentioned, we've all driven by this hundreds, if not thousands of times. And if you're not paying attention, you may not see it because it is a little bit back from the roadside. And at night, unfortunately, the illumination isn't what it was maybe 15 years ago. And I think, it's one of these tremendous works of art, public works of art. It's a great asset. I think we need to make sure that the Parks Department is ensuring that they have their eye on this. So over time, when there are needs to maintain it, we do have money available, or should I say, there is money available to make those improvements. But if we're not keeping our eyes open, those repairs won't be made. So glad to be a co-author or sign on to this order.
okay, Councilor Rivera.
Yeah, I thought I was supposed to be signed on to this. I requested to sign on last Friday, and I just want to say this is a really good order. Maybe why should we be thinking about this, or now is at the time? But honestly, this was a great order. This was a really good order when we think about this is exactly what we need, I think. And to know where we are right now, it's important to know history. And I really want to commend Councilor Bergman, because I can't even, I went to Dart. I can't tell you how many times I walked by that. And it wasn't until this order that made me kind of really do the whole story and the history behind it. And it is great. Being a woman of color, comes from a marginalized population. This symbolizes a lot. And I really want to appreciate this order, and I think it would be great, and I think to highlight, and I think it's important to highlight these things that are so significant in our community. And so I thought, I had requested to sign on last week on Friday with the city clerk's office, but not sure. But either way, want to make sure that I'm signed on to this, and Councilor Bergman for this order.
Okay, we'll sign on.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to sign on as well.
Sure. Councilor Toomey, you're up next.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank Councilor Bergman and sign on as well. I was actually president of Park Spirit of Worcester when we worked collaboratively with the Friends of Rogers Kennedy Memorial as the nonprofit entity to help raise those funds. And I know that Mr. Budd was incredibly instrumental in making a huge impact in that beautiful public art. And I think it's incredibly important that that we stay on top of these things. They may not seem as important as food insecurity, but part of our history needs to remain visible so that we can remember that. And actually, you've got two farmers with a plow. They're plowing a field essentially, and it really is a symbol of farming and maybe it's the message that we need to make sure gets out there, that maybe we need to go back to that. So I think it's important. I congratulate the councilor for filing that order, and I'm happy to sign on.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Toomey. So I think everybody wants to sign on, I think. So we will send that to the manager as amended. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. That the City Council of the City of Worcester does hereby go on record expressing concerns of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission's decision to approve a wholesale delivery regulations in the state of Massachusetts for the marijuana industry. Councilor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman?
No, I was just raising their hands. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. The Cannabis Control Commission established the option of delivery as a step towards creating, social equity. And I'm certainly not debating social equity as part of this resolution. I think this resolution is more about concerns relating to the decision to make delivery an option. And how do we regulate something that has the ability to take place outside of our city? We had 15 recreational marijuana facilities come into our city, and we made them jump through numerous hoops, security, guidelines, regulations. In a lot of cases, we made their security tighter than that of a bank. Now we have the option of people outside of our city coming in to deliver marijuana into our city. And I have concerns, as a father of four, as a person who is in the mental health field, of the implications of that. What's the impact on revenues? What's the impact on guidelines? What's the impact on public safety? What's the impact on parents like me who have anxiety or concerns? You know, I'm not speaking to a brick and mortar delivery entity in the city of Worcester here. That's different. We have the ability to work with those individuals in the city to determine proper guidelines, proper safety, neighborhood meetings, and going through the process that we all went through when these 50 entities came into our city. What I'm asking here in this resolution is just showing concern. And concern around this decision that was made and the implications of that concern. And so for me, as someone who is a parent, as someone who is in mental health, as someone who saw us eliminate flavored tobacco and other tobacco options and just have people run to the outskirts of our city and to different towns that are connected to us to see a lot of those tobacco entities fall apart, particularly one on West Boylston Street, a West Boylston Street tobacco entity that employed persons of color, women, people who are recovering from addiction, who slowly but surely lost 1, 2, and all their employees in their shop altogether. This is a concern, and I think that for us to, sit idly by and allow this to take place without asking questions or debating the merits of something like this occurring is not something that I know that my residents would want from me. And so that's what this resolution is about. It's about concerns related to this decision, safety, and certainly revenues. Where would we be right now in COVID if we didn't have over $3 million of revenues from marijuana entities? We'd be pulling that from other places. That $3 million came in handy to support us in a lot of ways. So just looking at this critically, Mr. Chairman, not really social equity is something that I'm always going to be on the side of. I think that we all are on the side of social equity in our own ways. And for me, this is more about asking the right questions, and having the right concerns around a decision like this being made and its implications on us as a whole in the city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to start out by saying, I too am a father of 3 daughters here in the city, social worker, on the ground, on the front lines, and I certainly understand some of those concerns. I think that we as a city have been very conscious of doing our due diligence. The city manager has led that. But what the state did here, what the Cannabis Control Commission did here, it was a good thing. It will create a more diversified and a more inclusive cannabis market. It will support specifically Black and Latino businesses, and also businesses of folks who have had barriers placed upon them. Let's not drive these businesses away. Let's bring those businesses right here into Worcester. We heard a caller today call in and say he has a community meeting, a man of color, a Latino man. He has a community meeting tomorrow towards this sort of endeavor. Let's bring these businesses to Worcester. This is a good thing. You see, Mr. Chairman, these marijuana laws that were in place, they disproportionately arrested and incarcerated Black people, Latino people, and poor people. And then they were marginalized. This is an effort by our state to want to help that very population through regulation, through legislation. It's part of the criminal justice reform package. Social equity, economic empowerment applicants, they go through a process. They're vetted, they're trained. This isn't just folks showing up. They do their community meetings, as you heard. Mr. Chairman, when you think about all of the monies that are coming into our city, yes, there's a concern about some of that revenue perhaps leaving. There's also evidence, as we heard tonight, of folks potentially bringing in millions of dollars into the city to conduct that very business. We should be recruiting these folks into our city and trying to figure out ways to have these Black and Latino and businesses for folks who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. You know, when you think about this particular item, there is a period of exclusivity that makes good sense to me. You know, it allows for those folks, once again, who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, arrests, incarcerations, folks who have their parents who were affected that way. It allows them more access. We know that since 2018, we know that over $1 billion have been generated across this state based on the revenues that have come in. But our Black and Latino business folks who have impacted again by the war on drugs, they've been not able to access it. So what does it mean to be a social equity and economic empowerment applicant? Well, it means that there's income standards. It means that you have to be a resident of Massachusetts. It means that you can be married or a child of an individual convicted of someone who has a continuance without a finding of mass general laws related to marijuana. And this is a way to right the ship. We have 15 applicants, as mentioned here in the city. And my question to the chair, to the administration, is how many of those licenses that have been awarded are social equity and economic empowerment applicants? To the chair.
Mr. Manager, I think there's two.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 or 3, Mr. Chairman. I'd have to just confirm that.
Thank you. So, you know, we have a couple, but we can do more, and that's what it's about. This is a good thing. Let's bring those dollars here. Let's find ways to keep those businesses here. I certainly support a report on this matter. I do, but to vote against, and we can say what we want, but to vote against the idea or to express concerns about what has gone into a lengthy process to open up access and opportunity for Black and Latino businesses, for folks who've been impacted by the war on drugs, is not something that I can support, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'll certainly would make a motion that we get a report on this so we can all be educated on it. But this is just too important. I spoke just today to 3 or 4 different Black and Latino business folks who are planning to do exactly this. And these folks have been born and raised and educated right here in the city of Worcester. And I think we should do all that we can to support those sorts of business ventures, because the way it's been done, these folks who fit the criteria, you know, for the social equity and empowerment applicants have not been able to access due to the capital that you need, the monies that you need to move forward. And this is an opportunity to broaden that base.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Councilor Rose?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do appreciate Councilor King's education on the process, highlighting, you know, the rationale to providing these social equity and social empowerment opportunities for Black and Latino folks. I guess I'm not really sure, you know, how that connects to being concerned about, you know, a delivery service. If someone comes into the city and we're bringing these revenues and enhancing these revenues through this outlet, through some brick and mortar that goes through a process that we can make people, residents and people in the city comfortable with, I think that that's fantastic. I don't disagree with pretty much anything that Councilor King just said. But if you're a delivery service coming from Auburn or Boylston or West Boylston or Paxton or Leicester or Holden, and you're coming to our city where we don't have the ability to police you or to create guidelines or to be given the opportunity to share and have a community meeting. If you're in Auburn, how are you having a community meeting in Worcester about your delivery service in Auburn? If you're in Boylston, how are you having a community meeting about things that are happening in Boylston? And there are a lot of Black and brown people who are working in a lot of these entities. What are we going to say to them when a delivery service from Auburn or Boylston comes into the city and takes over their job? It's almost like we're countering, like we're just spinning our wheels and treading water at that point. I do not have issue with brick and mortar businesses coming to the city of Worcester through this outlet. I have concerns with people externally coming to the city that don't have to go through the process that Councilor King just shared and highlighted, who come into where we can't be comforted in their level of safety, or we can't be comforted in the fact that they're not going to steal businesses from the many folks who went through arduous process to get their businesses up and running in our city. And so that's really what I'm talking about. And so as it relates to social equity, 100%, Black and brown business in the city, absolutely. But having a delivery service come from a surrounding town or a surrounding entity that we don't have any guidelines, no any process, any jurisdiction, any support around is something that we should be concerned about as parents, as leaders in our communities. I don't think that it's something that we need to stand idly by and just accept because social equity is a priority in that sense. I think we need to ask the right questions. I think this resolution does that. And I think we also need to focus on the businesses in our city and recruiting these types of business to our city. And I think we're on the same page. I think we're just thinking about it through a little bit of a different regional lens. So I just wanted to offer that, Mr. Chairman, as a counter to Councilor King's eloquent description of the process and the rationale around this, which I wholeheartedly believe in.
No, I think both of you make some very good arguments, and I think Councilor King had mentioned that doing business in the city. So when I get that report on the economic empowerment applicants here in Worcester, where we are with those and what help they need to get up and running, I think that's even more important. And I do support Councilor Rose's motion. I think there's I think the gentleman spoke earlier, he's got 30 jobs here in the city of Worcester for the people, and hopefully the neighborhood people and Worcester people. And but they're all important issues, and I think in the report back from the administration on how we assist those applicants here in the city was how we get them up and running, and whether we can be helpful or not, if it's legal or not for us to get involved with that. But I think that's even more important, to have those jobs, those applicants opening up their doors here in the city of Worcester. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, so the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have another comment.
Sure, Councilor King.
So, just for clarification purposes, currently there can be deliveries. It has to go through the retail brick and mortar entity. This takes away from that. So I just want to be clear about, there are deliveries happening now. In this particular order, is this city council goes on record expressing concerns over approving wholesale delivery regulations. Those wholesale delivery regulations that have been changed most recently are specifically changed to allow for more Black and Latino businesses and for folks who are more disproportionately impacted due to the war on drugs as for economic opportunities. And that's besides the descriptions that I move forward on, and I certainly appreciate the concerns and folks are coming into our city. there will also be folks leaving our city, and I just can't in good conscience vote against increase and enhance opportunities for those equity applicants.
Okay. Councilor Rivera?
Is it possible to I mean, I agree, Mr. Mayor. I think like what you just stated, Mr. Chairman, what you just stated regarding kind of both really having really good points. Is it possible to hold this? Is it time sensitive in order to just get more information before we move forward? I'd hate to kind of like either vote for or against something that I think many of us may still have some questions and want to kind of really take a look, especially when there has just been really great arguments put here tonight. And I think as we keep talking about equitable economic development, there's a really good point to be made here. And then there is, concerns on delivery, in many aspects as well. But are we also kind of behind the times? Is this something that's going to move forward anyways? Or is this something that that's going to be done regardless? And should we be thinking of measures now? I don't know. So I think I'm just wondering, I don't want to necessarily be the cause of holding it. I just want to say, is this something that we could think about having more information on before moving forward on this?
Sure.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not sure where it is. I think the Cannabis Control Commission already passed this. I think
yes. Yes. And there's a 3-year designation where Black and Latino businesses and the businesses most disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs have 3 years of exclusivity in regards to this sort of business model, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I think maybe we get some more information. I don't know, if you want to hold us more information, I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't necessarily want to be the cause of holding it. I'm happy to vote it in. I mean, if we're looking at the vote being that the City Council hereby goes on record expressing concerns over the Massachusetts, decision to approve wholesale delivery regulations, yeah, there are concerns, and we could go on record saying we have concerns. I would be willing to do that. It doesn't stop anything. It doesn't move anything. And can we be open to conversation as we move forward? Can we address the concerns so it doesn't hinder the progress of equitable economic development, right? So, so I'm happy to vote on this tonight, and I definitely will support it if it's looking at the concerns, because they are legitimate concerns. But on the other hand, I would like to be able to make sure that tonight's not the end of the conversation, and that we're actually saying, how do we make sure that we're moving forward with addressing the concerns so it doesn't hinder the economic development of disproportionate communities? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. I'll just add to that. And I think it's just that. We're expressing concerns here. This isn't a vote against social equity or not. There are some legitimate concerns here. And just because something's right doesn't necessarily mean that it gets a rubber stamped and gets pushed through. I think that there are some legitimate concerns here, and I think that's what this resolution reads. It doesn't read anything about opposition against social equity or opposition against the entrepreneurial spirit of the Black and brown community. This is about concerns, and they're legitimate.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the model enhances those opportunities. And I just want to make sure that the motion that I put forward regarding a report on this, so folks can actually know what those concerns are, comes back. There's no motion, there's no report aspect to this.
Sure, so we'll get that back, and so Council King's report for request, and also so the motion is to approve. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
No.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Lawley?
Yes.
And Mayor Perry?
Yes. Okay, our next item is that the City Council of the City of Worcester does hereby call upon Congressman James P. McGovern to co-sponsor the Puerto Rico Self-Determination Act of 2020. Further, that the City Council of the City of Worcester call upon the United States Senator Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey the Massachusetts Federal Delegation. All Congress to support passage of 8113. Councilor Rivera.
Yeah, I've actually had an opportunity to meet with different municipal leaders that are Puerto Rican throughout the United States, especially areas and municipalities that have a large population of Puerto Rican community. And so there has already been resolutions that have been passed in several municipalities. One of the closest that was done was in Springfield, and I want to commend Senator-elect Adam Gomez on that, on some of his work. So I want to be able to say that why we felt that this was important and what we're talking about. We're not having a conversation of the politics behind this, and we're saying, okay, this is federal. Why are we getting involved? For us in Worcester, I mean, why some of our municipalities and why we're in Worcester, why this is important, is because of the impact that it occurs to cities like Worcester. So basically all we're saying, as we know, just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, that Puerto Rico is essentially property of the United States. So we're essentially saying, give an opportunity, something needs to change, right? This whole point of, Pan, Patria y Libertad, which was sold many years ago, which was the slogan that was done through the U.S. in Puerto Rico, really it hasn't been working really was not something that functioned. They need to be able to have self-determination. So we're basically saying, that right now when we look at that, some greater number than the population of Puerto Rico itself, 3.5 in 2013, has been in the decline. There's so many people leaving the island. So while you're on the island, you have no right to vote. While you're here, you can, right? We are U.S. citizens. We will recruit. We actually were made a colony of the United States. We're essentially property of the United States. We have no right. We're second, it is, although we are citizens, we're like second-class citizens. Why is this as important to Worcester for them to have self-determination? We're not having the argument if they should be independent, they should be state. Let them decide. So we have right now top 20 metropolitan area with the largest Puerto Rican population. We're in the top 20. We're number 17 in the U.S., Worcester. When we look at gateway cities, are homes to 67.5% of the state's Puerto Rican population. In Massachusetts, 11.2 gateway cities identify as Puerto Rican. So when we look at this and we see some of this of, the school, how we have majority of Puerto Ricans enrolled in the state-attended public schools, while the same is true of just under 75% of enrolled students. A student in Massachusetts, 1 in every 4 attend private school, but yet 1 in every 10 are Puerto Rican. When we look at different issues regarding child poverty rate, economic development, we saw, because of the economic downfall, some of the migration happening. We saw migration happening after Hurricane Hugo, different national disasters we've seen as we have the issue of the green effect. We continue to see after Hurricane Maria, we all saw the impact. Many of us worked on that issue. Mr. Chairman, you worked very closely with the Puerto Rican community after Hurricane Maria, and we saw and yes, we are a welcoming city. And yes, this is my community, so of course, but there is an impact that happens to municipalities with this migration, in the sense of looking at the education, housing, workforce. So there is an economic impact, for example. So as we're looking at this, why this is important, so there may not be a city in Arkansas or a city near Las Vegas or whatever that might be impacted, but there's specific cities. So there's different places, Chicago, Florida, New York, here in Massachusetts, that have been moving on this, because although it's at the federal level, there are municipalities like Worcester that will be affected by the decisions that are made at the federal level. And this is why this is so important. And so I'm asking this council to support this. As we look at this moving forward, over 50% of Puerto Ricans in Massachusetts live within 5 cities. here. Springfield, Boston, Worcester, and Worcester's in the top 3. And so all we're asking is a level of is to be able to have a self-determination. I know that Congressman McGovern is on board with this. He called and made it public last night that he would be supporting this as he moves this forward federally. And so right now, just asking, this is just really looking at us as a city, as a gateway city, as one of the city with one of the largest populations, and then we're in the top 20. We're number 17 in the nation. It's really important, and number 3 in Massachusetts. It's really, really important for us to take a look at this and support it. And this is why this is so important as we move forward. And happy to answer any questions. As essentially, we, as people may or may not know, it's almost like saying if I was a district councilor, we don't have any opportunity. Sorry, my dogs are barking. They don't have any vote or voice. So even though there's people that represent that go to Washington, when it comes down to voting, they have no. So it's almost like saying that I come to council, I can speak to my council members, I can make a statement, but when it comes down to roll call and voting, I have to recuse. I cannot speak, I cannot vote, I have no vote power. While here, for example, while my father was here, rest in peace, while he was here, and he's lived in the United States for so much of his life, in his older years, he split his time between Puerto Rico and here when he was physically able to do so. But when he came down to vote, he was here in the States because he couldn't vote while he was in Puerto Rico. So essentially saying there's something that needs to happen. This isn't partisan, because if we look at, there's issue with many situations that we're looking at regarding economic, the Jones Act right now, taxes are 11%, schools are closing. If we don't think that there's migration that's going to continue to happen, and not because people want to leave the island, they want to be able to have their home and establish there. The economic situation, the situation that is occurring right now, it can no longer stay the same. And so there needs to be a level of either we proceed on the courtship and get married, or we split up altogether. But something needs to happen. I won't say anything else. And Councilor Russell understands what I'm saying, but I think it's really important for the United States to move this forward. This is, again, nonpartisan, because if we look, this isn't a Republican issue and a Democrat issue, because I could have an argument on either one. On not moving this forward. And so I think this is time. It's time to do this, and the future of not only Puerto Rico, but municipalities like Worcester that have such a large population of diaspora of Puerto Ricans and a history, will be impacted by these decisions that are being made in Washington. Again, it may not be a city in Arkansas, it may not be a city in Illinois, but here in Worcester, definitely those decisions that are happening in Washington are going to impact us here. And if that wasn't clear after Hurricane Maria, we saw that here in Worcester. So I would ask very humbly that my council members will support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope I'm signed on to this. I should be.
Yeah, you're on. Yeah.
Okay. And, I certainly appreciate Councilor's leadership on this, and she's certainly the first Latina councilor in our history, and that matters too. What I'll say in respect to this is that this is also important to my family. I have family on the island. A lot of folks here do. And it makes sense. In addition to that, what this really does, it's about self-empowerment, self-determination, and democracy, and respect. There's a lot of other city councils that have done this across the United States. Here in our city, we're talking about Boston, talking about Springfield. We are the second largest city in New England, as Councilor Rivera mentioned. We have a lot of folks who have Puerto Rican roots right here in our city. And this is a great opportunity to take leadership and send a message to our federal representatives, Markey, Elizabeth Warren. Of course, our good congressman is going to co-sponsor this. And very happy to sign on this resolution. And when you think about colonization and everything that comes with it, and how and what role and what the parameters are for Puerto Rico in our government. This is important. And lastly, I'll say that, the island, post-colonization and currently, the environmental impact that Puerto Rico has sustained as a result of those legislative parameters is significant. I'm happy to sign on.
Thank you. Councilor Rose?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope that I'm also signed on to this as well.
You are one of Councilor Wally, myself too, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Puerto Rico has no congressional representation in the U.S. despite having more citizens than 21 states. I think Councilor Rivera's analogy around having to recuse herself, only allowing her voice to go so far, in that environment. I think that this is important for Puerto Rico. I have I'm the founder and owner of a gap year program in Puerto Rico. I employ a number of people on the island, and they are really excited that there are people advocating for them beyond the island. Councilor Rivera had some really great statistics about where we land in that on statewide and nationally. And I think that whether you're a Puerto Rican on the island or you're living here in the States, I think this is a symbolic measure by the second biggest city in New England to show our support of this. And I think that I appreciate Councilor Rivera putting it on. I appreciate the way that she simply describes how this all comes together. And I emphatically am in support of us moving this forward. I want to thank her for this, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Russell?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any business interests or any family members that I know of on the island, but I would like to sign on with this item. It certainly affects the city of Worcester, certainly affects a lot of the constituents that I'm here to represent, and I'm proud to sign on to the item if you'll allow so.
Sure. So I signed on to this, and I think Councilor Rivera said eloquently of Councilor King and Rose and Councilor Russell, and I'm very supportive of this. And I'm sorry. And Councilor Rosen, do you want to speak?
First of all, I want to thank Councilor Rivera for bringing the issue forward to us, and I do want to sign on, and certainly I'm in complete support. When we talk about self-determination for Puerto Rico, I mean, they have a big choice to make: stay a territory and with all the problems that they've gone through over the years, or vote for independence, or even statehood. So there's some choices that they have, and they should be discussing it. And I certainly support the chance for them to have self-determination. So please sign me on.
Okay, so we're going to take a roll call. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace? Mayor Pettis?
Yes. Okay, next item is approval on the roll call is the attached annual calendar for council. We can make amendments as the year goes on with this, so get started for the new year. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes. Next item is 15A and B. I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. 15A and B were items I was going to hold, but the reason why I interrupted, and I apologize, I thought we were holding 10A. I think you announced that, and then I had a bad reception on what I heard, but I'm not sure if that was held or if there was any action taken on 10A. But 10A, 15A, and 15B, for the same reasons, all should be held.
10A was just asking for a report. I think we did vote on that. And what's that? Anyway, request city manager provide counsel. That was just asking for a report, but we can hold 15A and B. It's the same thing. So
that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So 15A and B are held. Anybody have anyone? Yeah, Councilor Russell?
Just a point of order. Are we under a timeline on these items? Because I know under the charter, some things are automatically approved if they're not acted upon.
Yeah, it's 90.
And is holding it going to affect that? I'd like to ask you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't. My understanding, the 90 days up is in January, but is Peter done on the call to confirm that? Or?
Mr. Chairman, it's Mike Trainer. I'm here.
Mike Trainer. I'm sorry. Either one.
The 90-day deadline is January 4th.
Yeah, so we can have this on the next calendar. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to hold 15A and B. Next up is 16A and B and 17A and B. 17A and B is going to be a Dan in the roll call, and 16A and B is going to be accepting the roll call. So a roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King? Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes, and that 18A was held by Councilor Merrill Carlson, and I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. I just want everybody to stay safe out there, and I do appreciate. I know it's hard doing the Zoom meetings, the WebEx, and it's not the same as being in the council chamber. We'll get through these next month of December into the January. Try to get back into the chamber and appropriate. So with that, we have a motion to adjourn. No
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Colorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera?
Yes. Sorry.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes, and this was a real good meeting tonight, so thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Be safe, everybody.
Yes. Be safe, everyone.